It's a windy afternoon here in Durham, North Carolina. Let's see what's happening around the world, and we'll see which one of our panelists join in the conversation and all along those lines. But definitely a lot is happening in the world. A senior military officer in Gabon has appeared on a national TV claiming that they have taken the power, and they have definitely said that they have placed the president under house arrest. And some people are saying that manganese prices might spike as Aranet suspends mining operations over the Gabon coup. So that is something that we are seeing in the news. And of course, there are a number of other things that are going on in the news as well. So I do see that Lee Newton Rhodes has joined me and all along those lines. So after I get to some of these news items, I'll bring Lee Newton on as well as other folks that might be joining in the conversation also. In other news, we're seeing that the Kremlin is saying that uh, Prigozhin's plane might have been downed on purpose, and that's what a lot of people were speculating in the first place. I'm surprised that the Kremlin is saying that, since that is maybe implying that they weren't the ones that did it, even though a lot of folks are thinking that they are the ones that actually uh, the ones that down the plane on intention and all in that space. But it'll be interesting to see what folks have to say about that. And if Sasha joins us and has any comments about that as well. And Ukraine, speaking of Ukraine, has blasted Pope Francis's address to Russian youth as imperialist propaganda. So he is apparently Pope Francis was praising the Russian Empire, and that definitely sparked Ukrainian fury and all along those lines. And then in news coming out of London, James Cleverly says he has raised human rights concerns with China, and the UK Parliament has called Taiwan an independent country as Cleverly visits China. So that is something that is going on, and folks are thinking that maybe he is having a pragmatic stance that might even be clashing with the hawks that are known as the Tories over there and all along those lines. So that is definitely something that we are seeing in the news. And then there is a question about the Aborigine people in Australia, and maybe Shaquille join us and have some conversation or thoughts about that, because they are saying that a bitterly divided Australia has elevated the voice of the Aboriginal people. So definitely the AEC commissioner has urged people to write yes or no in the voice referendum, and Australia has set a date for that historic referendum on its First Nation people, and that date will be in October. So we're only talking a couple of months from now that they will be making a decision in that line. And the Pakistan ex Prime Minister Imran Khan's custody has been extended by 2 weeks in a cipher case. So we're seeing that as well. It looks like he'll be in the jail there until September 13th. And of course, a lot of countries have different thoughts around the LGBTQIA community than we do here, and all along those lines. And apparently, in Nigeria, police raided a suspected gay wedding and arrested more than 200 people. And that was what was happening in that part of Africa. And then there was another case that was down there in Uganda where two Ugandan men may face a death penalty after aggravated homosexuality charges. So Amnesty International is saying that the Ugandan authorities must drop the charges in the death penalty case under anti-homosexuality act. So that is something else that we are seeing in the news and around news items and all along those lines. Apparently, Biden is going to be welcoming the Costa Rican president as migration in the Western Hemisphere is reaching new records. And so, definitely, there's going to be discussion about migration with the president of Costa Rica, and definitely, U.S. and Costa Rica are affirming cooperation on both migration and semiconductors. So that is something that is going on. We are seeing that meeting took place and all along those lines. So they had that meeting, and it'll be interesting to see what folks have to say about that as well. And the FBI has disrupted a cybercrime operation by wiping malicious programs from hundreds of thousands of computers. So the FBI and European agencies announced a major takedown of a hacker network that was out there in that space. So a lot of people were doing some hacking, and apparently the FBI, in cooperation with some of the European countries, had a major takedown in that space. Let me see one of the things that are going on in the United States, and then we'll get to the Lee. And I think I heard somebody else come in the door as well. But yeah, it looks like Idalia has made landfall, and it is definitely looking like it is coming into Florida as a dangerous Category 3 storm. And some people are saying that for the uninsured, this could definitely be a thing that could lead to financial ruin and all in that space. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what happens in that regards. And of course, people are still talking about the victims of the Jacksonville attack and all along those lines. And definitely we still got the Trump case going on as well. And the Proud Boys could get record sentences this week in a January 6th seditious conspiracy case. So that is something that is going on as well. And apparently the ex-Proud Boys leader, Enrique Tarrio, is to be sentenced today in that January 6th case. And as we talked about yesterday, there was definitely some very tense moments there in UNC, just down the road from me. And all along those lines, the suspect, Tali Key, has faced in the court. And definitely it looks like they are still investigating, and it looks like a lot of folks will be thinking about gun violence. And in this case, the gun violence took the life of a professor over there at that particular university, and a number of other people were threatened and all along those lines. But definitely last time I checked, I don't think they were going for the death penalty, even though they have arrested the gentleman that was committing the crime and all along those lines. But I'm going to bring folks into the room and everything. It looks like, by the way, as I bring folks in, that a student was told to remove a Gadsden flag patch from his backpack, and 12-year-old boy was booted from class over the Gadsden flag patch on the backpack and all along those lines. And apparently it was one of those "don't tread on me" patches and all along those lines. But maybe folks have some other thoughts and some other ideas about that and all along those ways. But we're going to bring folks in and see their comments about a number of things, including the fact that apparently in Minnesota, police departments are pulling school officers due to the Minnesota restraint law. So I know a lot of times people are looking for school officers as a form of security and all along those lines. But I've got different folks in. Like I said, I've got Lee Newton Rhodes in, and I've got Shaquille with me, and I've got Sasha Starr. We'll see if anybody else joins us as well. So that was just some of the news items that I saw, and just a bit of a rundown. I guess the first thing we should get to, since we didn't get to it that much on yesterday, is the number of shootings. I think I read somewhere that Biden is looking at a assault rifle ban and all in that space. Like I said, we definitely had that shooting in UNC and a number of other places. So is it realistic for folks to try to go after assault rifles and to go after some of the harder weapons and all along those lines? Or is
Mark,
it not realistic?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I went back up a little bit. You just brought up the Gadsden flag, and you have to see the clip and read the article about exactly what happened.
Okay.
This kid's being accused of bringing a flag that represents slavery. And the parents are trying to say, this has nothing to do with slavery. And the teacher or this administrator says, I don't care. Don't get confused with don't let her get confused with the facts. There's ignorance that what drives society today. People don't care about facts. They have no interest in whether they're right or wrong. They just have an agenda because it bothers them. They're looking to be offended. The Gadsden flag has nothing to do with slavery. It's a Revolutionary War item.
I mean, if I remember correctly, I thought that was the one. Yeah, if I remember correctly, I thought that was the one that had the snake and had the
yes, it does. Well, it's not the stars and bars. It's not the Confederate flag, which we can argue about that also. But this has absolutely nothing to do with slavery.
I mean, was it the
school? Am I wrong?
Was it the school board, or was it the? How did it come about in the discussion? Like I said, I just heard.
I'm sorry, Leo. I'm not actually familiar with the flag you're talking about. So this is one of the rare moments where I'm sorry, I'm not up to speed. with the divisive American politics, identity politics.
Yeah, and I'd have to look more into the flag. Like I said, I do remember the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, and like I said, I thought that was around a couple of issues, and
Since when has the "Don't Tread on Me" flag been a symbol of slavery?
Like I said, I'd have to hear more about the case to know more about it. And
Mark, I just put in the chat a New York Post article today. I was just put up.
And I'll try to put that up as well. Because like I said, I'm not as familiar with that particular.
And the last thing you talked about, with Biden and with assault weapons bans or whatever.
Yes.
Can someone define for me what is an assault weapon once and for all? Like, people cannot define their fair share or anything. They just throw these terms out there. Is there a definition of assault weapon?
I'm going to assume an assault
Any weapon can be used to assault.
No, I'm given that, but I think when people are talking about assault weapons, they're talking about those that are like the rapid fire and like the sawed-off shotguns and a number of others that are
handguns are rapid fire.
Say what?
99% of handguns are semi-automatic handguns.
Okay, I did not know that. You learn something new every day. But like I said, I assume that that's what they are talking about when they say assault rifles. I know a lot of times when I hear people talking about assault rifles, they're talking about those that are able to put off a massive amount of bullets in a rapid amount of time, like almost like a Gatling gun or some of those.
Yeah. Machine guns have been outlawed for years. These are semi-automatics. They're talking about one pull, one bullet. The quicker you pull, the more bullets that go out. But each bullet requires a pull. Same thing, rifles, and same thing, handguns. 99% of them. They're not single. Put in a new bullet, and you have to keep reloading. They're not muskets.
Like I said, I have to look up assault rifles and all along those lines. What are they doing in Australia?
I just want to come back to the Gadsden flag. I didn't know that's what it was called, but I do know that the "Don't Tread on Me." But
right.
I'm not even sure how that would be interpreted as a flag.
Yes, you are, Shaquille. You know that very well how it could be. It's called ignorance.
Well, yeah, yeah, that's probably more correct. Yeah.
Because even the mother was even the mother.
I looked up. I was just reading the article on that Lee put into the private chat about what happened.
Yeah, I was reading the same article.
Why do we feel it necessary to browbeat down children or young people if they have a political view or opinion that we don't like?
Why not?
I know a lot of young people who are related to me or who are the children of friends of mine that'll come to me and say, I actually really think that socialism is the way to go, right? I don't browbeat them into it. I have a discussion with them. I try to debate the ideas. I don't do it as forcefully as I would debate ideas with panelists on here, obviously, because I want them to be able to express their views. And, we all throughout our lives interpret things and consider things in different ways and change our minds about different things. And they should be able to explore something. I think the idea of, this kid obviously had a number of different badges on his bag, but the idea that, he should be, struck down by the teacher and essentially bullied by the establishment because he's having the incorrect views, that's not healthy. That's not a way to encourage kids to think for themselves.
Isn't it part of it? And I'm going to bring Jacoby in as well because he just joined us. But isn't part of the problem that and this is an issue that I've had even with people in the African-American community and a number of other communities as well, is that sometimes it is seen as hip or cool to wear certain things, even though you may not even have that agenda. How many people wear?
Let
me finish. How many people wear? Hold on a second, Shaquille. How many people wear a Malcolm X shirt without even knowing the ideology of Malcolm X, or a Che Guevara shirt without knowing the ideology of Che? And all
I'm sure there's a lot. Let Lee have the final word on this because he's about to leave. Lee, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the clip of it. On the article, Mark. If you click on the article, there's a clip there that's worthwhile where the parents are trying to explain to this person that they have no interest in the facts. And the parents are saying, if you want to ban patches, go for it. Ban all patches. But this patch has nothing to do with slavery whatsoever. I think even Jacoby would agree with that.
No, I'm sure Jacoby won't. Anything that's centre right that is said, Jacoby's going to disagree with. Based
on an opinion, maybe, but Jacoby, I think he's good on facts.
well, yeah, really, okay. Well, I beg to differ. But Mark, you talk about BLM, Malcolm X, all that. Toby, I'll give you I promise you, I'll give you a chance to respond and come back at me, no problems. Malcolm X and BLM shirts, all these things as being hip and cool. No, I don't think it's hip and cool. I think it's because you're not allowed to not wear them a lot of the time, because you guys twisted the argument so much that it wasn't enough to just not be racist. You had to be actively anti-racist, which means to be anti-racist, you had to actively discriminate against people who are white. You had to actively discriminate against men. You had to actively take away opportunities from different people.
Which is racist.
And a lot of people finally just said, you know what, enough is enough. Right? I'm not a horrible person. I'm not responsible for the things that happened 100 years ago, 500 years ago. Leave me alone. I just want to get along with everybody. And that is not how the viciousness of the recent movements has worked. And so this kid who has based on his, has some sort of handwritten thing on his backpack, he's got based a whole heap of other, I would agree, right-wing slogans on his bag. I don't see the problem with that, actually. I think that is a fair and reasonable thing, and it's fair and reasonable for young people to explore the political arena. You may well find this kid in 3 years' time is far more left than what he is today. You might find he's far more right. I think most people will find themselves in different positions and listening to different political camps as they go through life. But when you have a school system and a college system and media and everybody who is so biased one way, I think that you create a situation where the anti-culture is going to be, well, let me look into the issues for myself. And if I come up to a different opinion, I'm going to express it because I'm sick and tired of being told what to think and feel. We have a video, Mark, for that Lee has.
I'm trying to get to the video and everything.
Mark, it's just about a minute and a half, and then I'm going to jump off after you play it.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get to the video, so I had not lost that and everything. Toby, we were talking about this.
I can share it if it's easier for you.
Well, hold on a second. I think I can find it. Like I said, but it might be easier audio. Oh, I got it. Well, actually, this one is 3 minutes long, but that's okay. Hold on.
I'm gonna stay on and watch it, and I'll jump off afterwards after.
This is a TikTok or a Twitter or something, I think.
Yeah, the one I saw looks like one of those things, either a TikTok or a Twitter, one or the other. But we're about to find out. At least one of them that I found from the article was, and all in that space. So we're about to go on to it. Jacoby, while I'm grabbing it, did you have any thoughts about it? Because we're talking about the Gadsden flag.
Lee's about to jump off. Do you have the clip or no?
I am getting the clip. Be patient. Patience is a wonderful thing.
Well, I can be patient, then Lee's going to be gone. So
hold on.
Thanks for the backup scale.
We're sitting in silence because we're making sure that Shaq is appeased.
No, it's not about me being appeased. Lee's going to go.
The clip is playing. The clip is playing. Don't talk.
That is what was, that's the reasoning behind them not wanting to slave.
The Gadsden flag.
The don't tread on me.
Okay. Which is the Gadsden flag. Okay. Okay. So he's what's going to happen if he doesn't take it off?
He is able to go. I was actually just telling him, like, I was upset that he was missing so much school. I'm like, so I asked if can he just take his stuff out of his bag and go back to class? Like, I just want him to go back to class. The bag can't go back. It's got a patch on it because we can't have that in and around other kids. So that's what I was trying to, and then he said you were close. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with slavery. That's like the Revolutionary War patch that was displayed when they were fighting the British. Like that's the revolution. Maybe you're thinking of like the Confederate Confederate flag.
Okay, I am
Is there
just
history
here
to
to
that
enforce.
No,
I am here to enforce the policy that was provided by the district. And definitely you have every right to not agree with it. I mean,
yeah, because the
absolutely.
ACLU says that he's allowed to wear that. If you like go on their website, it's like says in big
So
letters.
all I'm saying is that
Unless there's like a ban on patches, period, like you said, there's no patches allowed at the school, you cannot display what you think or anything like that, or what cheer, anything like that. I think it's like one-sided, you know, because you allow some patches, but not other
Other
patches.
kids have tattoos, like, other names, and like, the American flag, or backpacks.
Yeah. That was like flown during the revolution with, yeah, I just don't understand that at all.
so what I can do is
And if you go onto the ACLU's website, yeah, let's talk to
I
someone,
can,
because
I
I
can
don't
have
want a
you
lawsuit,
speak
I really
to,
don't.
I can have you speak to Jeff Yoakum
Okay.
again. And then he can refer you to our person at the district.
Okay.
Because like I said, we're following district policy is what we're doing. So the last thing I want is him out of class.
Yeah, I know,
That's
you
all
too.
I-
He
the last
takes
thing I
his
want.
classes seriously, he
Yes.
studies, he wants to get straight A's, he did that. He made honor roll when he was here before, he intends to do that again right now, but it's hard because he keeps missing class for this. So,
I understand that.
yeah, and I mean, we teach him to always stick up for your beliefs, and I mean, you're going over the revolution for 7th grade. I mean, the founding fathers stood up for what they believed in against unjust laws. This is unjust.
Okay, like I said, we're upholding a policy that was provided to us, which we have to uphold.
Okay, can you show me where the policy?
So that's the end of that clip and everything. But yeah, that was the clip that you were referring to. And like I said,
It's exactly
Mark,
this
thanks for
sort of
playing it.
No
exactly
problem.
this sort of crap that made me want to leave school early and go and pursue studies in other ways. This idea that you have to abide by whatever the school says, but stand up for your own beliefs. But if you stand up for your own beliefs, you're the bad guy. This kid, he looks like he's reasonably well dressed. He looks like he's pretty polite. He didn't interrupt anybody, as I would have done back then, as I continue to do now. I think it's a disgrace what that school's done. Personally, I don't know the rest of the context. Maybe there's more to it, but I think the kid should be allowed to display within reason whatever the kid wants to display.
I'm going to jump off right now. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I just want to hear real quick, Toby, any comment?
I actually have a lot of comments on it because this same school district had to take down the Black Lives Matter stuff. So this is a policy that they're upholding.
I apologize to Toby. Can you just comment on what this happened today? Just and save that for afterward. I'm just about to
No. But what I'm saying that they're upholding their policy. So
Which
they
is?
took down the,
No, to Toby, because nobody's talking about Black Lives Matter things on someone's backpack.
no,
That's
he's-
all,
no,
you're
no,
changing
Toby
the
is
goal.
are you listening to what I'm saying?
Yeah, I heard exactly what you said. I
You're
responded to it.
complaining that they're upholding a policy that they had a Black Lives Matter mural and a discussion. They had to take that down.
There's a difference between a mural and
Wait,
something on a
Shaq,
student's
Shaq,
backpack.
this is why I can't even answer the question. You're trying to overtalk me. You know that's not going to work.
Because you're changing
You're doing
the
it again. I'm talking louder than you. It's not going to happen.
goalpost.
So,
Yeah, right.
stop, Shaq. So again, they're upholding the policy. They're telling this kid that they did the same thing here as they're doing here. So they're holding that policy where this kid is not going to be allowed to wear that patch because they're considering it disruptive. Just as the policy was upheld against the Black Lives Matter thing that they did during the whole, actually Black History Month. So yes, you can complain that they're coming down hard on this child, but they're doing the same thing to this child as they're doing the others. They're telling them that these things, be them political or viewed as they're being seen as disruptive in class. As much as I would allow for a child to wear the BLM stuff, and I would probably be on your side saying, "Oh, they're coming down on people because they're letting this BLM stuff slide." I see what you're trying to say, and they're going after this child, but they're upholding the policy on both ways, and not comparison. I haven't even tried to compare the two and to show you how it's a false equivalence to compare the two flags and the two patches. I'm just saying that they're just upholding their policy equally across the board. So this child displaying this flag, regardless if it's the Gadsden flag, BLM, the pride flag, they're telling him it's disruptive and they cannot do that. So you can argue, hey, they're coming down hard on this child, but no, they did it for others as well. So
now that
if
you've
you
finished
want that
now that you've
specific
said all
event,
that, it's still not true.
we cannot argue this in a vacuum. If we want to argue okay, well, the Gadsden flag has a very, very rich history in racism, and there's a problem there, we can talk about that if you really want to. But I don't think that's the pathway that you're trying to argue. You're trying to argue that, oh, well, they didn't know it. And so if you want to argue, well, they didn't know it. Well, guess what? They did the same thing with the BLM stuff. So it's held equally across the board. So your argument that they're treating these people differently is wrong.
Everything you just said is still not true for the reason I interjected when you first started saying it, which is that the school having to take down a mural, which is a representation of the school's opinion on something, is different to a student being told.
No, see, Shaq,
Shaq,
hold on. Let me interrupt you because you want to do this wrong already. You're starting the premise wrong. You don't have kids. You don't have even a wife. So let me explain to you
what does that
something.
have to do with what school
When
policy
you
said?
send your child to school, your child is representing that school. That is a fact. When your kid walks into that school, they have to be allowed by that school to be wearing those things. This is why some schools, they take away everything a child can do. And this happens overseas. This happens even in the States. You have a uniform that you have to wear because what they try and do is avoid these conflicts and complications. Because what you wear when you send your child to school is representative of that school. So if you can go in there with a BLM flag, then the school itself is cool with BLM. If your school allows for the Confederate battle flag, then your school is cool with the Confederate battle flag. So what your child wears in that school when people come and take pictures represents that school. So don't tell me, oh, well, the school did this mural, it's separate. No, they took down the BLM stuff because it broke school rules.
Yeah,
They told this child that he could not do this because it broke school rules. There's actually even a case where there are two people in, I think it's Tennessee, where this child wanted to have giant American flags on the back of his car. But no, they said he could not do that because those flags were just a little bit too big. But no, people like you have twisted it to a point, oh, well, they hate the display of American flag. No, he just could not put it that large on that flag. So again, it is the same thing.
You keep not responding to what I'm saying.
It's the same.
People are allowed to wear, the kids at that school are allowed to wear on their school bags BLM and rainbow flags.
No, they're not.
The school wasn't. Well, that's what the article said. That's what the article said, and that's what the complaint was. Okay, so if you have a different opinion of that, and your opinion is worth,
you already said that you didn't know the context.
I don't have a wife and I don't have children. Then that's
you
fine.
already said that you didn't know the context. We already starting this argument bad.
Welcome to the show, Steve.
I want to switch the topic real quick, and let's get to Australia. I'm going to be updating everyone on some world events today, but it turns out the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, is recommending amending the Constitution so that indigents have more say in the laws and policies of Australia. Shaquille, can you comment on this?
So what Australia's been asked to do is to vote on something which is going to fundamentally change our constitution. But Anthony Albanese has taken a leaf out of the American Democrats' playbook and decided, all right, I've got this for you. I want you to vote on the change. And Australia says, okay, and what's the change going to be? We're not telling you. What do you mean you're not going to tell us? What's the change? Like, how is this thing going to work? We're not telling you. If you vote for it, then we'll work out the details. But if you don't vote for it, well, there's no point in us trying to work out what the details are. As a result, there are a number of people, high-profile people who represent the Aboriginal and Indigenous population in this country, who have said, look, we have some really grave concerns about this, actually, because we already have all these other groups that talk to Parliament and have a say, and we're not sure how this is going to work. And as far as I can tell, what the Yes campaign is basically saying is, well, you're racist if you don't vote for it. even if you are part of the minority that they purport to be trying to advance. You're a racist if you don't vote for this, and it's going to make us look terrible on the world stage. And so you better vote for it. And just to make sure that you know that you better vote for it, if you're a high-ranking or a high-profile person within that community and you say you shouldn't vote for it, we're going to give you death threats. You know, the typical playbook of the political left. Now, I think most Australians are like me, undecided on it at the moment, and would like to know a little bit more. These are my opinions, not the opinions of the Pacific Rim Council. I think most people are undecided on it and would like to have more detail. But in the absence of having more detail, I think it's a really big ask to say to Australians, vote for this. We don't know what the change is actually going to mean. We're not going to tell you how it's going to work. And, you know, we're just going to change the constitution. I really have some grave concerns about that. And I think that if the Yes campaign and the Labor Party is really serious about this, then instead of making it a politically divisive issue, what they should do is they should actually outline how it should work. And my personal suggestion is that what they should do is they should do a trial, maybe have the voice for 2 years or 5 years or something like that to see how it works and iron out any inefficiencies and deficiencies in the system. And then, you know, we can look at actually enshrining it into our constitution as opposed to enshrining it in our constitution first, which means it's very difficult to undo, and then working out the details later. And in the past, by the way, when these sorts of things have come up, like Australia becoming a republic, because of the lack of detail, Australia voted no. So I think that this is that their heart might be in the right place. It probably is in the right place, but I think their execution of this program is very, very well ill-founded.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, it's interesting to see, you know, what's going on in Australia, and we have you here from Australia as an analyst, so I had to ask you. Moving forward, we want to get an update from Sasha on Ukraine, Russia. We are in an emergency, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, with Hurricane Idalia about to hit the coast of Florida. So, very interesting in North Carolina, where Jacoby and I live, and Mark Lee will be affected probably this evening or tomorrow morning. Sasha, do you have any updates for us on Russia, Ukraine? I know there's been let me read to you one thing I've heard today from the Autonomous briefing. Aren't you guys glad I'm not using the New York Times anymore for my briefs every now and then? I have a little cheat sheet. So Economist, the Kremlin's accused Ukraine of launching strikes on targets in 6 Russian regions. Ukrainian drones reportedly struck an airport in the western city of Kharkiv, in what appears to be the biggest aerial assault on Russian territory since the war began. Any comments, Sasha, on this?
The comments are that there were no war in the history of the world where the fight would be on the territory of only one country. So the aggressor, whether it's now or 1,000 years ago or 5,000 year ago, the aggressor country attacks smaller, weaker country and insists that, oh, we are going to fight you, but only on your territory. Don't dare even thinking about attacking us on our territory. Wow, that's never happened before, and it's not going to happen now. The Ukrainians have now their own weapons. They don't depend on West supplies weapons to attack Russian targets on Russian territory. Then, well, I'm sorry, it doesn't bode well with Biden's wish that the fight will be contained only on Ukrainian territory. Therefore, he stopped delivering all the promised weapons. He delivered a small part of it. If you'll take an item of say 12 points, what was promised and should have been delivered, in many cases it has not been delivered at all. In some cases it was delivered 10%, in some cases 15%, or so on. That's so cynical of the United States and the West, saying, oh, Ukraine, oh, we send you some weapons, so why don't you attack? Go for attack, just go ahead. And only now I can see that they appreciate Ukrainian tactical genius, how to conduct this war. It hasn't been ever used by the Western armies, simply because the Western countries are always fighting much smaller and weaker opponents with absolute dominance in the air and in all other components of the war. This is not such a war, and West doesn't have a clue how to fight that war. But Ukraine will prevail with help or without help from the West.
Well, I
It
think it's
will
interesting,
happen to
before we
prevail.
get into some other issues, and Shaquille and Jacoby, love your sparring. It's wonderful. A little sparring like a boxing match. But real quickly, we're seeing a lot more use of drones, and I think that it's going to be interesting to see whether, we see more drones, more robots. Will war become easier to fight? We've also talked about, artificial intelligence, and one concern about AI is the fact that, could there be automated responses driven by AI, for example, for nuclear attacks? And what would that do in terms of, what this connection of human extinction? So kind of scary. I don't know. We all saw the movie War Games, but could, an AI agent take over and actually initiate a war against someone? And how would you know whether it was being authorized by, the president of the United States, the premier of Russia, North Korea, China? These are all, I think, things that are really concerning. But we're seeing it, Sasha, in the war, a lot more use of drones than I can remember.
Yeah, I agree. And both sides are using them quite successfully, unfortunately. But Ukraine is doing better and faster developing new drones, using them very intelligently in a groups of small groups, let's see, 2, 3 drones, and then they're followed by a group of 10, 15 drones, and so on. They're very, very well planned and effective attacks. Now, about the possibility of the nuclear exchange in World War III, well, please thank your former president, late Bush Sr., who had a great chance to completely disarm Russia of its nuclear arsenal, failed to do that because of lack of imagination, lack of understanding what's important and what's not. Instead, 3 years later, after the Soviet Union collapsed, he disarmed Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Belarus, and gave all its supplies to Russia. Welcome to hell. Thank you very much for your great politics. Not only you cannot fight any normal war, whether it's Vietnam or Iran or Iraq, Afghanistan, or anything, you failed even to do the political decisions which are important. Complete failure. 2 minus.
Thank you, Sasha. I was going to open up my monologue today, but I did want to take a moment, and this is going to be a little bit more of a serious conversation, and then I'm going to close out on some insights. But at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, well, first of all, we had the racially motivated shooting in Jacksonville, and just 2 days later, where my daughter goes to school, although she is in South Africa studying abroad, my son's 3 best friends are at Carolina. There was a shooting in a lab. A teacher's assistant and professor was killed. Mark Lee, I'm going to have you comment on this. Quite scary. Schools are still in lockdown in Carolina. Not the best way to begin your college experience with a gun shooting. I know that this is something I just want the panel to share with me. Number one, is there a problem in America? Forget about, this isn't about Second Amendment. I believe, and I'll say a disclaimer, that if you're a lawful gun owner, I believe that you have a right to have a gun. I have many friends that are lawful gun owners. But is there not a problem in our country when somebody can just get a gun and shoot someone, throw the gun away? And for those of you listening that say, well, that's a one-time incident, this could happen anywhere now in America. It could happen in a school that you drop your kids off to. It could happen in a grocery store. It could happen in a theater. Is that something that always existed, or do you believe that this is something wrong with America? I'm going to start with Nick Paldiva, the founder of our network, then Sasha, who is actually a Canadian, to just give your perspective of what you're seeing. Shaquille, we always value your opinion. I want you to kind of give us your opinion of, this is kind of a work session, guys. I mean, how do we approach this problem? Nick, what are your thoughts?
First of all, my ex-daughter-in-law is a full-time professor at UNC Chapel Hill. So she's tenured professor. She'll teach there forever, which is one reason we moved here, because we know our grandkids are always going to be here. Because if you get a tenured professorship in the United States, you're not going to leave. It's just the nature of the beast. So, of course, the natural inclination, let's send our kids to UNC Chapel Hill. And my answer, for the most part, is no. I want to send them overseas. I want to send them to Spain, Morocco, Italy, United Kingdom, anywhere but the US. Part of the reason why is what you just described. The US isn't safe. And also, having an international education can be very valuable today. So I send them to Canada. But part of it is, frankly, the bottom line, the US isn't safe. It's not going to change. If you have a choice, send your kids overseas to school. They'll be safer there. They're safer in Australia. They're safer in Canada, where two of our commentators are from. But the United States is not a safe place really to be. We have a lot of intrinsic problems that our leadership is not addressing. The fentanyl drug overdose use of 100,000 people dying, guns, people dying. And, and our leadership, the national debt, which is absolutely huge. The leadership in the United States and the media do not address the issues that will make a difference. So with guns, it's not going to change. The people aren't going to change. Same reason I left my other country club to come here is the HOA was abusive. I like choice. So rather than stay in an abusive situation, I left and came over here. And when Shaquille was having a debate with Jatovia, I was listening about school. School choice is important. When I first started, I didn't believe in student vouchers. But after working with the public school system of the United States of America, and I went to private schools when I was younger, then I went to some public schools, you need the choice. If some person wants, I got to have BLM flags and Dixiecrat flags and all this other garbage, you go to a parochial school like I did, you wear one thing, a uniform, that's it. So we need to have more school choice. To do that, you need school vouchers. And yeah, the public school system will go down the toilet, but too bad. They're going like they want to go. But let the parents have a choice to send their kids to private schools and parochial schools. As my dad used to say, we paid tuition twice. Once for the school you didn't go to, which was the public school, and twice to the private school that we paid to have you go to. It would have been nice to have student vouchers.
Nick, along those same lines, just really quickly, I was going to say that in talking to folks that were there, and I don't know if Jatovie's had the same experience and all along those lines, but I'm actually going to give some praise to Chapel Hill because apparently they were very effective in what they did. They locked down the city very quickly. They did a very effective job. I mean, everybody that I've talked to, I do have technically a second cousin, even though we consider her a cousin because it's my cousin's daughter and all along those lines. But she was, somewhat traumatized by it. So she went to visit her mom in Chapel Hill and all along those lines. But definitely they did a great job of not even letting Robertson, which comes from Durham, into the area and just locking down that area until they were able to get to the person that was committing the crime and all along those lines. So they did a very effective job with their law enforcement and coordination of the law enforcement as well. So that is what I have heard from folks that were involved, including some that were caught in the middle of it.
Yeah, and they're on lockdown today, and there's a vigil this evening or today, and we pray for Chancellor Geskowitz and all of the faculty. I'm going to go to Sasha next, and then I just want everyone, this is kind of a work session. I want to have one of the things I want to do with World Edition is for us to solution together and bring different perspectives. So Sasha, you're a Canadian. I'll just start with this. Today, the United States has you're 250 times more likely of having a gun homicide in U.S. than Japan, 150 times more than Great Britain, and we're 4% of the population, but own 60% of the guns. So, looking at this from a Canadian lens, is there a problem in America, and what is the solution? Because if we say we need gun reform legislation, then the NRA and the Republicans get upset and say, well, it's a mental health issue. But should we have, in all the countries I mentioned, there's been there's more stringent gun control laws. So do we have a problem in America? Or do you think it's just something that we have to live with? And then I'm going to ask Shaquille Latimer and Jatovie, what are the solutions then? How do we keep our children safe when we don't know who's going to get a gun. I'm going to start with you and then go to Shaquille.
Safety of children in America, it's not the most important issue. The most important issue is that America is no longer shining down on the
Hill, shining city on a hill.
shining city on a hill. Yeah, that's stuff I already forgot about it. It's no longer there. It's lost its way, and it's hugely divided country by politics, by race, by material financial inequality, and not forget about your horrible tax evasion, which leads to astronomical foreign debt. And you don't even have to go for individuals. Start with your major corporations who are making trillions of dollars, and they're not even registered in the United States. They're registered in Ireland or some other tax efficient countries. So therefore, economically, U.S. is doomed. Nothing will save it at all.
Hey, Sasha, just really quickly, hold on a second, just really quickly,
It's
because
all
I want to bring up some of Canada's solutions and see, and maybe Sasha or Shaquille will agree with this. But on May 30th of last year, the government of Canada introduced
If it's a Canadian solution, I'm sure I won't agree with it.
BLC 21, and it proposed to strengthen rules to prevent gun violence in the various communities of Canada. The bill introduced a national freeze on the sale, purchase, and transfer of handguns into law. This national freeze took effect on October 21st of last year, and the bill also included significant measures to address the alarming role of guns in gender-based violence through red and yellow flag laws, strengthen border controls by increasing maximum penalties for gun traffickers, create authorities to combat firearms smuggling, trafficking, and related offenses, establish new firearm-related offenses, and strengthen penalties, and address concerns with mid-power replica air guns. Would any of that work in the United States?
In my opinion, no, because people in the United States love their guns. And regardless how many children will be killed, unless it's your own kid, God forbid, you will never, ever support some kind of a gun control or so on. And there's just too much money involved, all the gun producers and sellers, and there is a great industry, and people will protect that industry as long as possible.
Yes, Shaquille, a hypothetical here. Okay, just from the lens of being Australian and an analyst on the show, what advice would you have for our country? I mean, if you're president and the United States Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, regardless of who sits in the White House after this election, what do you say? There was bipartisan reform legislation that senior Senator Thom Tillis from North Carolina was on the working group with that they were able to pass. Or is it just a political football, and do we just need to get used to living like this in America?
First of all, I don't agree with Sasha that the US is doomed. I think the US will bounce back no matter how bad things get. To your question about guns, look, the United States it's a different country, and it's a different country in a number of fundamental ways. But if we talk about the British Commonwealth, it's different in that the US doesn't have a royal family. It doesn't have somebody who's got a birthright that can veto the parliament or veto the Congress. So you guys have to kind of do things yourselves. Many of the rights that you have are rights that were hard fought in the Magna Carta, and in some cases things that before the Magna Carta and some things after. But these were fundamental ideals. The idea that government in America could never pass laws that were too oppressive because you had a heavily armed populace is a fundamental part of your society. The reality is that a relatively small number of Americans own guns, legally own guns, but you have more guns than you have people. I don't think that in and of itself is a concern, but the level of gun violence in America, and not just violence as in somebody shooting other people, but also self-harm, where guns are being used, is amongst the highest rate of self-harm with guns is in the United States. But I think the question is what you do about it. And unfortunately, it becomes politicized when people say, well, we just want sensible gun reform. And they try to depict the other side as not wanting sensible gun reform. Well, if it's sensible, then everyone's going to agree to it. there's obviously different sides of this argument. Some people will say that maybe the school teachers should be armed. Other people say that that's a really bad idea. That's going to make it worse. I don't know what the solution is, but I think it's folly to try to suggest that by bringing in harsher laws on gun ownership and making it more difficult for people to legitimately buy and own guns is going to be a solution. Slightly off the topic, I've said for the last couple of years that a really great concern of mine is that fentanyl, which kills substantially more people in the US and relatively young people in the US, is something that's happening in the US. When is that going to start going to other Western countries like the UK and Australia? And in today's news and yesterday's news, a man has been caught importing fentanyl into Australia. I think most of the stuff that Canada's trying to do, I'm not really sure I agree with. The anti-trafficking of guns and the strengthening of anti-trafficking rules, that's probably a step in the right direction. But I think the US has to acknowledge that there's so much stuff that is imported into the US, whether that be, you know, humans that are trafficked into the US. I'm not weighing it on immigration, but humans that are trafficked into the US, whether it be drugs, guns, or other contraband. These things come into the US. You're not a water logged country like Australia. We're an island. We are able to protect ourselves in different ways. You are surrounded by other countries. You share land borders with other countries. I think that whatever America's going to do, it's going to require, you know, sensible conversation from both sides of politics. And what really has to be at the forefront of these conversations is reducing violence, and especially when it comes to children and school kids, making sure that they're going to be safer, whatever that entails. I think that the idea of just making it political is going to be the problem. But having said that, we know that America has been violent, or more violent, especially when it comes to things like homicides and gun violence, than most other Western countries. However, I think it's worth noting that the general rates of violence in the United States per capita is not really any higher than most other Western countries. It's got a similar kind of level. It's just that gun violence is more prevalent, which is more serious. But what are you going to do? I'll just say this last thing. What are you going to do? If you ban all guns, for example, if you could just wave a magic wand and take all guns away from the United States, what are you going to do if you face the problems like the UK has, where they have an enormous, very, very large increase in the rates of knife violence? Is that what you want to do? I mean, this is a complicated issue. I don't think it's as simple as saying let's harsher laws in.
Thank you, Jacoby. You have 2 minutes or a few minutes. What are some of your solutions?
So just to start off with, guns are a big problem, and we have to be honest about that. We can't say all this filibuster. Well, what about knives? What about fentanyl? All this other stuff. Let's be honest and talk about the problem in the room. The number one killer right now, or the number one, the leading cause of death for kids is guns. It's there. We have the statistic.
19,000 deaths last year, this year.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So we have to be honest about it. For example, we need to have background checks on every single gun sale. Doesn't matter if it's private, doesn't matter if we need to kill all these loopholes. These loopholes are what are part of the problem. Because a lot of deaths are from kids, or from adults, kids, whomever, getting these guns without going through these background checks, buying guns over state lines, which we know is illegal, but it happens. Buying guns at the state fair grounds. Ooh, we're gonna go to this gun show, the gun show loophole. That's what it's called. So we gotta fix the problems with the background checks. It has to happen. It has to have on every single gun sale. That is one thing statistically proven that has cut down on gun sales. Also, we've got to change our talking points. We have to stop this whole idiotic, well, you're making it harder on your average citizen, your law-abiding citizens. Well, you're a law-abiding citizen until you commit a crime. Once you commit a crime, what are you talking about? That same person who just hunted people in Florida, hunted black people in Florida, bought his guns legally. So we have to stop the talking point. We're just trying to make it safer for everyone, even those who want to have guns. We need to have the gun buyback programs throughout all states. We need to actually advertise those and make those a big thing and make those something where people can, because people are looking for ways to get money. People are struggling financially. Let's make them understand that this is a gun buyback program where you can actually, just like any pawn shop, instead of taking your old Walkman, go ahead and take that Glock 9 that you got at the house that you're never really going to use in your lifetime, make some money off of that. Go ahead and make the gun buyback programs a positive thing and not a negative thing. We have to have full mental health screens every 2 years. We have to have gun training every 5 years. I have to sit here when I'm growing up, I have to take more actual classes every 5 years to make sure I can actually drive and maintain my car and my driver's license. Well, you know what? You don't really have to do much training to get a gun. And that's been documented. It's well documented. So why can't we actually make it a responsibility and not actually this fun toy? So make it into a responsibility where, okay, you have to have mental health screens and we have to have it documented and we have to be able to follow it. We do it with your hospitals, and we have to make sure that we look at your health and we track your health. Well, we can track your mental health the same way, create that database, and the same thing with gun training. And then lastly, we have to have actually gun insurance, because the exorbitant cost on gun violence to our health care system is huge. So if we can have some type of gun insurance to help pay for the problems that, we always complain about, well, I don't want to pay for this person's health stuff or this person's health stuff. Well, we're also having to pay for all the gun violence problems that are there as well. So when somebody goes out and shoots somebody, I shouldn't have to pay for that. Is that we're not talking about that anymore?
No.
We should have to. No, we have to have gun insurance the same way that we have car insurance. It's got to be a responsibility more so than this fun toy that we're always going to have.
Yay, Jacoby for president.
So I'm gonna start a couple of things. I love
Somebody speaking up.
Be gentle. I just love how, the insults come flying to me. I'm not married. I don't have children. The comments made by people that have different views to Jacoby is that
your name was not even mentioned, but whoa, here we go.
And then Jacoby comes out and
tell us all your grievances.
Jacoby's right on. Gun insurance.
And then Jacoby comes out.
Cut me, Nick.
And almost verbatim quotes from what the Democrats are currently suggesting with gun.
Democrats, here we go. Now, I wrote this stuff down. I didn't say anything Democrat. I didn't say anything Republican. I said solutions. Now, what you come on and do is cry that, oh, well, there's your same talking point.
Republican. I thought you did a great speech to Toby.
Please, be respectful, Shaquille. Let Shaquille finish his
mandatory mental health evaluations. We don't have that in the United States. This should be part of everybody in elementary school, middle school, high school, college. That's a big part. Everybody takes a physical, but no one takes mental health. And today they even have MRI screenings that can determine whether or not your brain suffers from mental health deterioration.
Go ahead and
look. So Toby, you had a good solution.
Just for me though. Don't mention my name and don't complain about me. Give me solution.
It's solution oriented. And so I think you did a great speech to Toby. It's too bad the politicians don't recognize it because they offer no solutions. All they do is cry and say, my thoughts and prayers are with
you. Well, the NRA has a big gut. And you're going to get an $8,000, $10,000, $20,000 check. It's hard to say I want gun reform, but I think maybe let Shaquille finish because we have to leave in a minute, and we'll come back to this topic tomorrow.
Let Shaquille have his 2 minutes of fame.
Yeah, I'm the one who's accused of filibustering. Look, these things that are being suggested by Democrats ignores the question. If you register everybody and you close the gun show loophole, which not being American, I'm not sure why they have that loophole. It would make sense to me, I think. But if you close all those loopholes, that's fine. But you haven't addressed what you're going to do about the illegal guns and people buying illegal guns and them and ammunition being brought into the country. In relation to mental health, that sounds really great on the surface. But firstly, on a practical level, the United States' mental health system is a joke. and I know I've got family that work in mental health. I'm very disappointed that the United States has such a poor system. But even if it worked properly, what would you do? Would you argue that somebody who has a mental health problem, say, for example, somebody's depressed or somebody's going through a bad divorce, are you then going to take their gun rights away even though they haven't committed a crime? I don't think that you would actually be allowed to do that with your constitution. So you would really require a constitutional amendment to do that. So I'm not sure that solves the problem. Now, Jatova, you can say no solutions, only complaints. You can say that. That's fine. The question was that Steve asked before is what solutions are there, and do we think that the United States can get past this? I'm not sure. I said that at the beginning. I'm not sure what the solutions are going to be, but I can tell you that there are some serious flaws in the solutions that are being proposed. But you don't want to hear that because your side has a different view. So that's fine, buddy. Everything you say is correct. Everybody else is incorrect, and nobody else's concerns are valid because only the Democrats, only the left has a solution to
It's
every
not a
issue.
democratic.
Literally said you have no
Maybe what you should
solution.
do
Toby
is do
actually
what
has
the political
great
left does
ideas.
on every
And
other
the thing
issue.
is,
Maybe
the
if
I
Republicans
you
and
gave you
Democrats
maybe
solution.
that'll solve the
I
problem.
gotta run. It's
You
time.
literally
Time.
said you had no
solutions.
I'm going to jump off just to close out. This is a very insane discussion. I think we have to figure out what the solutions are. I don't have the answers. If you're a parent dropping your kid off to school this morning, you're going grocery shopping. If your kid's in a university, I don't have an answer for you of what would prevent someone from getting a gun. How do we prevent it? We just can't predict who's going to be mentally ill on the campus. But maybe we keep our eyes open. And
Steve, one of the
look.
suggestions by the NRA was that there should be either all teachers or some teachers that are
That's a
armed.
bad
Would
solution.
you be, I didn't ask you, Jatovi, I asked Steve. Would you be happy with that solution, or would you be
Not
opposed
a
to that solution?
solution.
What solution,
That's not
Shaquille?
a solution. That's just selling more guns.
Shaquille, what solution?
I have
The
solution.
idea that people that work at the
Here's the
schools,
solution.
that some
Well,
or
let's
all
give
the
the
people that work at
teachers guns
schools
so they can have
would
a
be
shootout.
armed,
That's
so
really
that if
right.
there was actually a shooter at the school, they would be able to do that. And interestingly, there was a couple of years ago, there was that
Let's have
incident in the
shootout,
church in
buddy.
Texas.
Let's vote.
They were armed and they were able to shoot that
Well, the
person.
other idea would be, and guys, I've got to run because I've gone over time.
No, we
but
give it a wind down.
I gotta go, guys.
Hold on a second. I know we give it a wind down.
Thank you
First,
for being a
you
World Edition. I'll
can
see you guys
ask the
tomorrow.
question.
Tomorrow we have a Ukrainian political analyst coming, Mikhail Brzezinski, and he's going to be talking about Ukraine and its impact in North Carolina, Ukrainians, and just his perspective of the war. Sasha, he's been on your show before. We'll be on tomorrow morning. 30 minutes, I'll be there. His name, but I've got to go, guys. Thank you all so much for being on World Edition. You guys can continue. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we can go a little bit over and everything, but we do need to wrap shortly. But I was going to say that there has been some conversation. I actually mentioned it earlier, even with the resource officer. So I heard the question that you asked, and if every teacher has a gun, yeah, that could be like the OK Corral or a WOW situation. But I know that I think it was Minnesota, they were running out of money and they were having issues with the money. So they were actually pulling out the resource officers, which are actually trained police officers that are in school systems. I think in Durham, we have sheriffs that are involved in the system, if I'm remembering correctly. Is that right, Jatovi? It's the sheriff's department.
The sheriff's department is involved in schools. You don't want to arm all teachers because now you don't trust teachers to use books and teach kids, but you're gonna want to trust the teachers with guns now. Come on now, we're banning books.
It is coming from the man that lectures the rest of us on false equivalency.
Well, partner,
this coming from the man who lectures the rest of us on false equivalency. The idea that over-sexualized books shouldn't be taught in school relates to teachers having things. Let me just ask you something. Let me ask you something. You're the great defender of the Teachers Federation or Teachers Union.
Teachers are
You're the great
educated
defender of them, so now you don't believe in them
They
anymore.
go to class, they go to school to learn how to teach kids, but you put books in the library and now teachers don't know what to do. But you know what? Since they don't know what to do after being educated for a decade on what to teach and what not to teach, let's give them guns when they're taught only a day to use a gun. And when they're agitated kids, guess what they can reach for? A gun. Hey, you know what? That's
And
good.
Jacoby,
Let's not
it's
have
not
books
like
in
those
school. Let's
guns
have
and their
guns.
holsters.
Jacoby, the question would be then, should you have some sort of
Whose
armed
crazy idea is
security
this?
at the school that can rapidly respond to these
Hey,
issues?
Mark
name
Lee just pointed out that they
name
are
one country which
terrorists.
they armed their
Yes.
teachers. Name one.
Not at
Name
every,
one
not at
country that
every
arms
school.
their teachers.
Not at every
Most schools have
Jack.
school resource officers.
Most
Yeah,
schools
but
have school resource officers.
not at every school do you
Now
have.
you're going not at every school. Okay, what? You're
That
talking
is
about the
able-
preschool that just opened up down the street that just hadn't got funding to get the resource officer? That's the school you're talking about? That's what we're doing studies on now.
Thanks for that, Jacoby. Not every school has a properly trained people that can respond to these issues quickly enough, and we know that because of the Uvalde
So you're gonna have
case.
to-
that
Yeah,
came up
Uvalde,
recently.
you're talking about Uvalde where the actual police officers sat outside the school while the shooting was happening? You're talking about the Uvalde? You talking about that one? That's what we're using now. That's your example.
See, this is sort of behavior.
I'm
and attitude
dropping
from you.
facts that you cannot
This
dispute
sort
when
of
you're
attitude
complaining.
from you. You're not talking about facts because you changed the goalposts.
Facts.
The police that were waiting out the front of the school were not actually people that were assigned
The
to that school. They
shooting was
responded.
happening while they were outside
responded
the
to
school.
school.
It's
You know,
on
you're-
radio.
it's
It's
this
actually
kind of
their
behavior.
audio is heard that they did not
this
even want to go in.
It's this kind of behavior, this kind of attitude from your side of politics, which
And
is
you're doing
so
this your side.
demeaning.
No, I'm
which is-
talking
which is-
about
which is- which is
reality.
the
You're talking
reason
about
why-
politics.
Which is the reason why when your side insists that we just want to have a
go.
conversation, and then other people sit
Filibuster
down and have that
because you're-
conversation with you.
So you're
this
doing a
is why
non
they don't
sequitur
this is
into
why they
an
don't
ad
talk to you.
hominem.
This is why you have a silent majority. This is why you get elections where you elect Donald Trump in 2016.
It's
This
funny
is the
how
reason why, because
you're
of
running
people
away
like
from
you
Uvalde.
carrying on the way that you do.
You're running away from Uvalde, even though you tried to use that as an example. When cops sat outside while the shooting was happening, that's why the actual
That wasn't
Uvalde,
the example I was-
the
that wasn't
Uvalde
the
police
example
are
I was
actually on
using.
trial because
But
of
that
how
wasn't
their
the
actions
example.
were.
That wasn't the
Love
example
it.
that I was using. You're an idiot. You really are.
Oh, thank you.
You're like dead set, mate. The way you carry on,
Shaquille and
the way
Jacoby.
you carry on,
Shaquille and
twist and
Jacoby.
turn and
Hold on a second.
selectively pick things.
Shaquille and Jacoby. I'm actually going to raise a question that I was curious to hear about, and I'm probably going to open up a whole other food fight and all along those lines. But I'm curious to hear what Shaq and Jacoby's thoughts are. But we've got a
Oh, I
number
don't
of
have any
countries-
thoughts. Just let Jacoby
Well,
run.
no, you haven't thought about this. There is a number of countries that have different rules and different thoughts around the LGBTQIA community. And if you heard earlier, I mentioned that there is a case in Nigeria where I think they are going after an entire gay wedding party. And I think it was in Uganda where it was aggravated homosexuality. I don't know what that charge is, but apparently it's a charge in Uganda. So I was just wondering, is this something that the America and the U.S. and the West should try to put their viewpoints on other countries that have different views of that community and all along those lines? So I'm turning to you, Shaquille. What is your thoughts?
Well, let's
I know
hear
you
from
visited Africa.
Jacoby first. Let's hear the whole left-wing, inconsistent, hypocritical answer first, and then I'll respond.
Oh Lord, that's hilarious. I'll even use Shaq's favorite line. Shaq always, because when he wants to argue against Black Lives Matter and doesn't even understand that when they're talking about
I
Black
don't
Lives
argue
Matter,
against Black
and
Lives
here
Matter.
he
Don't,
goes.
don't,
You want
no,
to go first, Shaq?
no,
Take it
don't
away, Shaq. You wanted to
mischaracterize.
go first, then
No, don't mischaracterize things or paint
The
me in a
answer.
picture that I'm not.
go for it.
No, don't paint me in a picture that I'm not.
Answer.
Okay? You
Answer.
said the other day,
Answer the question Mark is talking about.
you said the other day something about me expressing trans hate. I don't hate trans people. I support trans people. I support the LGBTQ community. I just have some concerns about some of the things that are going on. There is no group of people that are above reproach or beyond reproach. I don't have any issues with supporting Black lives in the United States or people of color around the world. Don't try to make out that I do. Thank you very much. What I have an issue with is a movement that is trying to bring about better conditions of people of color being hijacked by politicians and being hijacked by special interests who care nothing about the problem. Okay? So don't sit there and say, oh, Shaquille has this anti-BLM thing. That's not the case. And of course,
So
I'm going
did
to
you
defend
answer Mark's
myself against
question?
that unfounded allegation.
Can
The question
you
was
answer
about,
Mark's question?
the
Can you
question
answer
was,
Mark's
no,
question?
you can go first,
No,
but
you
don't.
interrupted me,
don't-
so I gave you the
That's
floor.
right.
Answer
because-
Mark's
because
question.
I don't want you to try.
You
to
had
disperse
no
my
idea where I was
reputation
going with that,
by
did you?
speaking
You
mistruths.
had no idea where I was going, but you answered. So Take it away. You
No,
got the
because you want
floor.
to sit there
Go
and
ahead.
start depicting me as somebody who doesn't like
I didn't depict that.
black people. I'm anti-trans. All this stuff that you always throw at me. Now go for it, Jatovi.
Come
Jacoby,
on.
what's your thoughts?
So again, as I was stating, I'm going to utilize one of Shaq's things because he took the BLM thing, and actually we had a discussion about it where, you know, people viewed it as Black Lives Matter only, which it was actually Black Lives Matter, and that was where it stopped. And then there became a retort, which became that retort was All Lives Matter. Now, if we're going off of that All Lives Matter, which actually came out of a racist base, and that's where it built up from. But if we're going to go ahead and, you know, ignore that and say that all lives matter. And the same thing that if you want to take the abortion claim that, you know, when those who don't want women to have the right to make their own medical decisions, they always use, well, every life is sacred. So if their point is all lives matter and every life is sacred, then we should always fight for human rights everywhere. So if the human rights of those in the LGBTQIA plus community are being assaulted, then those same people with all lives matter and all life is sacred should be fighting to help those individuals. From many countries within the African continent, many countries across the world, which have instilled laws to make it illegal to be with the one you love or even have any relations with the one you love if it turns out to be seen as gay or sodomy, even though sodomy, I mean, it happens between male and a woman anyway. But if it's seen as homosexual, or if it's seen as an abomination is what they want to utilize. So again, if those all lives matter people, Shaq, if those all life is sacred, Shaq, people believe that those things are true, then of course we should fight for human rights. Of course we should protect those individuals and we should reach out and try and help those individuals. Shaq, correct me if you don't believe that all lives matter or that all life is sacred.
I agree with you. We should actually be advocating for these countries, not just in Africa, but in other countries, to perhaps make their laws a little less harsh. I'm not going to go so far as to say that they should fully legalize it. I think that that's something for them to determine themselves. I think the death penalty seems a little harsh. I'll certainly do my part as a Western representative next time I'm speaking to the president of that country and other countries in Africa. I think that's a little harsh. I do. I don't think it's appropriate, though, for the World Bank or the US to withhold funding from the country unless they fall in line with international norms, because I think that we have to recognize that we either enforce and impose our morality on them, or we actually say to them that you're free to run your own country, even if they're going to have laws we don't agree with. In relation to the aggravated homosexuality, I don't think the full details of this case has actually been released. Aggravated generally means that the person has engaged in sexual conduct with a child, or with with somebody who's mentally disabled or something like that. That's where the aggravation comes. Should that sort of crime carry the death penalty? Again, I'm not sure that it should. But again, I think if we're going to impose our views on this, we have to be very careful about where to draw the line. One of the issues that many developing countries have is an issue of child brides. And what do? We know that a lot of girls, become pregnant. They have lots of issues with those pregnancies when they're very, very young. And some of these girls are forced essentially into sexual relationships before they've even hit puberty. Do we in the West step in and do anything about that, or do we just stand back? Now, I have said, and I've said this with, I forget the lady's name, who was a protester saying that we should only go down diplomatic channels. I have said, if we say that we stand for human rights and we say that we stand for freedom and liberty, how much do we stand for it? Are we prepared to put our money and our military resources into making sure that countries comply with those human rights? Or are we going to stand back and just say, well, we're going to turn the other cheek? So I agree with Jatovi that people's lives do matter. I think that people should be able to make certain decisions for themselves. And if there's no harm to anybody else, that's something that we should certainly advocate that other countries recognize. But I'm not sure that we should impose our will necessarily, depending on what the exact circumstances are. I think that it would be a mistake, though, politically for Uganda to execute this person, because they clearly are going to get the ire of the international communities. I think that's a dangerous move, unless they're trying to show how sovereign they are or something. But I think that would be a very dangerous move. So yes, I would largely agree with the comments that Jatovi made. There are some points of disagreement, obviously, but yeah, largely I agree.
What do you know? We had a moment where Jacoby and Shaquille agreed, and that is a good thing to end this show all along this lines and everything. So we're going to have a ending. I do know that at 1 o'clock we'll have a discussion around investment and all along those lines. And Shaquille, you have to go back and watch a show that was on yesterday. It'll be on reruns, but we have a show on the network called Real Girls Rock. The discussion on Real Girls Rock was on polygamy. So they were actually talking about polygamy and whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, and whether folks should be involved in that community or not.
Can I just quickly say something on that, though? Whether it's an issue to do with child brides, which the United States still has, I don't understand why, but so many states in the United States still allow very young people, 30. I think there was something like 200 12-year-olds marrying 38-year-olds. That's absurd to me, but why that's allowed in America, I don't know. But I think that, like, say with polygamy, there are some countries and cultures where that's perfectly okay. There's other countries where it's not legally recognized. I think there is a question of, well, how much government control do we want? Do we want government to tell people how to live their lives? We may not approve of it. I may not approve of somebody having multiple wives. Maybe I do approve. Maybe I don't care. It's not the issue. But just because somebody doesn't approve of something, does that mean that we should use the force of government to make it illegal? You know, these are issues that we have to deal with in Africa. I just want to say one last thing about Africa. Jatobi, you brought up an issue there in your conflation of issues. You talked about abortion. And I'll just remind you that abortion across Africa is generally not allowed, or it's allowed under very, very limited circumstances. And Uganda is one of those places where abortion is not allowed. I personally think that is a real concern, especially within the context of very, very young girls who are falling pregnant. We know that Medicine Sans Frontiers goes out to these places and allows abortions to occur. We also know that there was some criticism of Mother Teresa because she didn't really support the use of contraceptives and all these different things. And so while she did a lot of good work, in some ways she maybe, in the eyes of the international community, may have dropped the ball on issues like that. I think the issues are complicated. And I think because they're complicated, because they're regional and cultural issues at play, we do have to be careful about imposing our will. I think what we need to do is as far as we can diplomatically, try to persuade other countries to change their viewpoints on things. But we should perhaps consider using force if and when there is severe and significant abuses of human rights and loss of human life.
And along those same lines,
just want to say that even the reason I brought up abortion, because that deals with women's rights, which is also something that is not taken seriously in many countries as well. So women don't have the same legitimate rights as men and that same equality as men. And that's because we are still in a patriarchy and we're not in a matriarchy. We still have the women not in the US not having the same equal rights. We still have women in the African nations not having the same equal rights. So it's
this idea that we live in a patriarchy, especially when you try to apply it to Western culture, right? At least 50% of fathers have daughters. You think they want to oppress their daughters? I mean, that's just not reality. It's not how people think and feel. It's a talking point.
We have the statistics and data that prove that women.
Well, I already know how you selectively choose and twist and turn.
Here's the funny part. Here's the funny part. Just as I pointed out and got you to understand the craziness of your argument earlier, and you agreed with what I stated.
What argument did you get me to understand the craziness of?
We'll get to that in a second. Let me explain.
Tell me now.
So your argument against every statistic that you do not like is always, you know what? Statistics can be all juggled around. But here's the question. You haven't pulled statistics, and when you do, are those statistics juggled around to make your point? So when you use this argument against statistics that you don't like, that argument can be used generally for anything to say, well, I don't like those statistics. So, statistics can just be disproven by statistics and anybody can make up anything they want. So it's just a very tough argument to make.
Hold on a second.
I professionally, what I actually do for a living is I manage money in the finance markets. Okay, mathematics and statistics is an integral part of what we do.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can look at the data and I can also see how data can be manipulated. And what I am saying to you is that when you pull statistics,
that every statistic that anybody pulls that you don't like has been manipulated.
And refuse to listen to how those statistics can be misrepresented.
Again,
you don't even want to hear
just
the
agreeing
argument.
with what I just stated.
So when you do that,
you were just agreeing with what I just stated.
I'm not agreeing with you.
I just stated that any statistics that you don't like, your first inclination or your first argument is how statistics can be manipulated. How statistics are wrong.
Chitovi, it is not.
You are now telling me that you work in finance and how statistics can be manipulated, but when you pull it,
you've said that, you got your needle stuck in the groove. Let me respond to you, okay? You selectively misinterpret statistics to prove your point, and all I do is
everything I post.
You said earlier that you managed to get me to see the folly of my own argument. I want to hear what you educated me on because I'm such an ignoramus.
Didn't say all that. I just got you to agree with what I just stated earlier. Where Mark was going to end the program.
Which is what you said. You'd come back to what I asked you. So which is what? What did you educate me on? What was it that you showed me the error of my argument on? What was it?
I mean, is this pertinent to the conversation?
Oh, okay. So when you said that you were going to come back to it, you lied. When you said
all lives are sacred.
How did you show me up? My views on the issue were totally consistent with that view, and it was totally consistent with what I've said previously on abortion and on Black Lives Matter. But again, because you hear what you want to hear and you selectively choose to reinterpret what you've heard, anybody who is just 1 millimeter on the right of you is an enemy. Okay?
That's what I pointed out.
Yep. Good. Well done.
Really quickly as we get ready to wrap up.
If you want to put that in the win column for yourself, that's fine. I'm not going to interfere with your delusions.
Just really quickly and everything. By the way, that show on polygamy also touched base on, and so you and Chitovi and Shaquille can be the husbands of the other folks, because they also discuss, and I think I got the term right. What's the opposite of polygamy? It's polyamory. I think that's the correct term. I always get the terms mixed up and everything, but I think that is the word.
Well, but there's no law against people being in polyamorous relationships, whether or not it's healthy for them or society is a moral question. There's no law against it. There is a law against polygamy, and whether or not there should be or not is, I don't know, a question for the legal scholars.
Yep, and Nick was back there listening all along those lines. I did have a video that I was going to play.
So the U.S. does not acknowledge polyamorous relationships under the law. What about other countries?
Well, most Middle Eastern countries do, and some African countries do.
So would they be illegal there? Let's see.
No, they're legal in most Middle Eastern countries and in some African countries. But the question in the United States, I think, would be, in most Western countries, would be if a person, it's generally males that have multiple partners, if a male has 3 wives or 4 wives, when it comes to disbursement of the assets when that husband dies, which wife gets it? The first wife? I mean, this would get very, very complicated. And I don't think the family court would be very well equipped to deal with that. It's an issue that more than likely will come up in the future, though, because it seems to be the general trend of sexual depravity that the United States is trying to impose on everybody at the moment.
That comes from religion.
Well, on that note, we're going to get on out of here. We'll have a discussion about this and other things on later conversations. Because I know we've definitely talked about morality and other things. Definitely Shaquilla's brought it up, Lee's brought it up, even I've brought it up, and other folks have. But right now, we're getting ready to get on out of here and all along those lines. But we can continue the conversation after we see this lovely globe going around and all in that space and those various countries being mentioned as well. But this was a fun discussion. I didn't know we were going to have a work session, but it was still a fun discussion. And all along
I just love Jatovi trying to say that he set me straight about the inconsistency of my ideas when my answer was totally consistent with my ideas. Brilliant work, Jatovi. Absolutely brilliant.
Just saying, Shaq, you're a champion in the past, but it's funny how you
we can get on out of here. Like I said,
in the Olympics
maybe tomorrow we'll have
gymnastics, I think
maybe tomorrow we'll have another work
You're
session.
not listening to Mark. He's trying to close the show.
Yeah, Steve loves work sessions.